The sound of a plastic tray crashing against the cafeteria floor echoed like thunder through Westfield Academy's dining hall. Harper Sinclair, the new girl with soft brown hair and gentle blue eyes, found herself backed against the cold wall by three towering figures. Chocolate milk dripped from her hair onto her white uniform shirt, the only one she owned. Next time you'll think twice before turning down Preston Whitmore's invitation. The voice dripped with arrogance that only generational wealth could buy. Preston, standing at 6 feet 1 inch in his designer blazer, loomed over her like a monument to privilege. Beside him, Jax Dalton cracked his knuckles through his football letterman jacket, while Bryce Callahan rolled up his sleeves, revealing arms sculpted by years of wrestling championships. Harper wiped chocolate milk from her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. I already told you, I don't date guys who don't respect women. 300 students in the cafeteria fell silent. Phones rose like a synchronized wave, recording everything. No one intervened. No one dared. Preston's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Respect, who do you think you are? Some charity case scholarship girl putting on airs. But in the next 10 seconds, everything would change completely. Before we continue this incredible story, if you've ever witnessed or experienced bullying, you know how powerless it can make you feel. Hit that subscribe button if you believe bullies should face real consequences. And drop a comment sharing your thoughts. Your stories help build a community where no one suffers alone. And remember, there's a small thanks button below this video. Every contribution helps us share more stories of justice and courage. Now, let's see what happens when predators pick the wrong prey. The tension in Westfield Academy's cafeteria was nothing new. This Connecticut private school, with its $60,000 annual tuition, had cultivated a culture where money meant immunity and power translated to impunity. Harper Sinclair had arrived 3 months ago on a full academic scholarship, her transcript gleaming with straight A's from her previous school in Washington, D.C. What the other students saw was a quiet girl who ate alone, kept her head down, and seemed to shrink away from attention. What they didn't see were the late-night encrypted messages she sent from her phone, the way she memorized every security camera angle, or how she documented every incident with the precision of someone trained in evidence collection. They certainly didn't notice the military challenge coin hidden in the inner pocket of her backpack, or the defensive scars on her knuckles that her long sleeves usually concealed. 7. Harper counted softly under her breath as Preston stepped closer. 8, 9.
What are you mumbling about? Charity case! Jax Dalton's voice boomed across the cafeteria. At 6 feet 3 inches and 220 pounds of football-trained muscle, he was used to making people flinch. But Harper's breathing remained steady, controlled in a way that made Sarah Chen, filming nervously from 3 tables away, wonder why the new girl seemed so calm. I'm counting, Harper replied, her fingers moving subtly beneath the table, typing something on her phone. Giving you a chance to walk away. Bryce Callahan barked out a laugh. Walk away from you. The 3-time state wrestling champion moved to Harper's other side, completing their semicircle of intimidation. My dad owns the biggest law firm in Connecticut. Preston's dad is the mayor. Jax here has a full ride to Stanford. What exactly are you going to do in the corner of the cafeteria, Mr. Jameson, the security guard, glanced up from his phone for exactly 2 seconds before returning to his social media scrolling. Mrs. Patterson, the lunch monitor, suddenly found something fascinating to examine in the opposite direction. The message was clear.
Harper Sinclair was on her own. "Your father's firm," Harper said quietly, her perfect memory accessing information filed away weeks ago. "Henderson, Callahan, and Associates specializes in corporate law, specifically helping companies avoid environmental regulations. Interesting clientele." Bryce's smirk faltered for just a moment. "How do you—" "And Mayor Whitmore," Harper continued, turning her gaze to Preston. "Currently under investigation by the State Ethics Committee for suspicious campaign contributions, though I'm sure that's just a misunderstanding." Preston's face flushed red. "You little—" He grabbed Harper's tray, flipping it over. Mystery meat and gravy splattered across her only clean uniform. "You think you're smart? Think you can come into our school and act like you belong?" "I think," Harper said, standing slowly despite the food dripping from her clothes, "that assault and battery in front of 300 witnesses isn't your smartest move, especially when 17 of them are recording from angles that clearly show you as the aggressors." Sarah Chen's hands shook as she kept filming. She'd been one of Preston's victims last year, her art portfolio mysteriously destroyed after she'd refused his advances. Watching Harper stand up to him felt like witnessing something impossible, David facing Goliath. Except David was a 5'4" girl, covered in cafeteria food. "Recording?" Jax scoffed, pulling out his own phone. "Yeah, they're recording you about to learn what happens to people who don't know their place." He started live streaming to his Instagram story. "Yo, Eagles fans, check this out. Some nobody thinks she can disrespect the team captain." The insults that followed would have broken most people. They attacked her scholarship status, her second-hand uniform, even made assumptions about her family's immigration status based on nothing but cruelty and prejudice. Through it all, Harper stood perfectly still, her breathing measured, her eyes tracking every movement. "Are you even listening?" Preston snarled, frustrated by her lack of reaction. He shoved her shoulder, hard enough to slam her back against the wall. "I'm talking to you. Title 18, Section 111 of the United States Code," Harper recited calmly. "Assaulting a federal officer or employee, minimum sentence of 8 years. "Federal officer," Bryce laughed. "What are you, delusional now?" That's when Harper reached for her backpack, moving with deliberate slowness to avoid escalating the situation. From inside, she pulled out something that most students wouldn't recognize, but anyone in law enforcement would know instantly. Harper always carried a professional-grade legal recording device, the kind used by federal agencies for evidence collection. This wasn't some simple voice recorder, but a sophisticated tool that captured audio with courtroom-quality clarity while automatically embedding timestamps, GPS coordinates, and encrypted verification codes. Every threat, every act of violence, every word spoken in that cafeteria was being preserved with the kind of precision that would make any defense attorney sweat. "Fancy recorder won't help you," Preston sneered, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes now. "My dad owns the judges in this county." "Federal cases don't go to county judges," Harper replied, setting the device carefully on the table where its red recording light was clearly visible. "They go to federal court. Different jurisdiction. Different rules." The atmosphere in the cafeteria shifted. Students who'd been laughing moments ago began to sense something was off. This wasn't playing out like Preston's usual power plays. The new girl wasn't crying, wasn't begging, wasn't running away. She was preparing. "You know what?" Bryce grabbed a handful of Harper's hair, yanking her head back. "I'm tired of this act. Preston, get the scissors from the art room. Let's give Charity Case here a makeover she won't forget." Several students gasped, even in Westfield's toxic environment. This was escalating beyond the usual bullying, but Harper's response chilled them even more. She smiled. Scissors. Harper's voice remained conversational despite Bryce's grip on her hair. That would upgrade this from simple assault to assault with a deadly weapon. Adds another 5 to 10 years. Shut up! Preston's famous composure finally cracked completely. He pulled back his fist. Designer watch, glinting under the fluorescent lights. Just shut your mouth! Time seemed to slow as Preston's punch flew toward Harper's face. 300 students held their breath. Cameras captured every millisecond. And Harper Sinclair, the quiet scholarship girl who'd spent 3 months being invisible, finally dropped her mask. The dodge was too smooth, too practiced. Harper shifted her weight, minutely, letting Preston's fist sail past her ear and into the wall with a crack that might have been knuckles breaking or plaster cracking, before anyone could process what they'd seen. Jax charged from the side, counting on his football training and size advantage. That's when the 10 seconds that would change everything began. Second 1 through 3 belonged to Preston. Harper's hand shot out, capturing his already injured wrist in a grip that spoke of years of training. The Krav Maga wrist lock she applied was textbook perfect minimal effort. Maximum control. Preston Whitmore, the untouchable mayor's son who'd terrorized students for 4 years, dropped to his knees with a scream that would haunt students' dreams. His designer blazer couldn't protect him from joints bending in ways they weren't meant to bend. Seconds 4 through 6 were Jax's nightmare. Harper pivoted, using Preston's kneeling form as an obstacle that the charging football player couldn't avoid. 220 pounds of muscle momentum met immovable object. But Harper was already moving. Her knee came up in a devastating strike to Jax's solar plexus, delivered with the kind of precision that spoke of countless hours of practice. The full-ride Stanford athlete flew backward over a lunch table, scattering trays and students alike, his live stream capturing his own defeat in high definition. Seconds 7 through 10 sealed Bryce Callahan's fate. The wrestling champion thought he saw an opening, diving for what should have been an easy takedown on a girl half his size. But Harper's counter was something from military close-quarters combat manuals, not high school self-defense classes. She redirected his momentum, added her own force, and introduced Bryce's face to the cafeteria floor with enough impact to crack the 60-year-old tiles. 10 seconds. 3 boys down. 300 witnesses. Dozens of camera angles. And Harper Sinclair, standing calmly in the center of the chaos, not even breathing hard. The silence that followed was absolute. Phones kept recording, but no one spoke. No one moved. Even Mr. Jameson had looked up from his social media, his jaw hanging open. Harper smoothed down her food-stained uniform, fixed her chocolate milk-soaked hair, and reached into her backpack one more time. The federal badge she pulled out gleamed under the harsh cafeteria lights. "You just assaulted a federal witness," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "And yes, Preston, that's a federal offense." "Federal witness," someone whispered from the crowd. Harper nodded, pulling out her phone, not the student model everyone had seen her use, but a government-issued encrypted device. 3 months of undercover investigation. 47 documented victims. Financial crimes linking your parents' businesses. And now, thanks to your ego and that punch you threw, assault on a federal witness conducting an authorized investigation. Preston tried to speak through the pain in his wrist. This is entrapment. Entrapment requires inducement to commit a crime you wouldn't otherwise commit. Harper replied, her voice taking on a professorial tone. I simply existed in your space. You chose violence. 300 witnesses and dozens of recordings confirm that. The principal burst through the cafeteria doors, his face flushed and panicked. Miss Sinclair, violence is absolutely unacceptable in this institution. Harper turned to face him, and something in her expression made him take a step back. Principal Morrison, interesting that you arrive now, 11 minutes after the initial assault began. Almost like you were waiting to see how it played out. She held up her federal badge again. Title 18, Section 1, 512, Failure to report a federal crime. Would you like to discuss your institution's systemic enabling of assault? Or should we wait for my supervisor? The principal's face went from red to white. Your supervisor? That's when they heard the sirens. The sirens grew louder. But they weren't typical police cruisers. Through the cafeteria's tall windows, students watched as 3 black SUVs with federal plates screeched to a halt outside Westfield Academy's main entrance. Doors flew open in synchronized precision, and tactical officers in FBI windbreakers poured out, their movements speaking of extensive training and urgent purpose. Harper tucked her badge away and checked her watch. Right on time, she murmured. Then louder, for the camera's still rolling. Everyone, please remain calm and stay in your seats. This is a federal operation. Preston, still cradling his injured wrist, tried to push himself up from the floor. My father will destroy you. You have no idea who you're messing with. Actually, Harper said, pulling out her government laptop. I know exactly who I'm messing with. She opened the device, revealing a sophisticated legal analysis platform that most students had never seen before. This wasn't some basic software, but a cutting-edge AI-powered system used by top federal prosecutors to build airtight cases. The screen displayed a web of connections, financial records, and criminal statutes that transformed 3 months of evidence gathering into a prosecutable federal case. Every incident, every victim statement, every financial irregularity was cross-referenced with federal law, calculating minimum sentences and connecting seemingly isolated events into a pattern of organized crime. The main cafeteria doors burst open again, but this time it wasn't school security. A man in a dark suit entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He was tall, athletic, with the same sharp blue eyes as Harper, and when he removed his FBI tactical cap, several students gasped at the resemblance. Harper, Special Prosecutor David Sinclair said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd prosecuted war criminals and domestic terrorists. Are you injured? I'm fine, Dad, Harper replied, and the revelation rippled through the crowd like electricity. 3 perpetrators attempted assault. I defended myself within legal parameters. Everything's documented. Jax Dalton, still gasping for breath on the floor, managed to wheeze out. This is a setup. David Sinclair's expression was carved from stone as he surveyed the scene. A setup implies deception. Mr. Dalton, my daughter has been conducting a lawfully authorized investigation into systematic hate crimes, financial fraud, and civil rights violations at this institution. You and your friends just added federal assault charges to an already substantial case. Principal Morrison stepped forward, his bureaucratic instincts overriding his common sense. Now wait just a minute. You can't just come into my school. Your school, David interrupted, pulling out a federal warrant. This institution has been under investigation for 3 months. We have documented evidence of 47 separate incidents of assault, harassment, and civil rights violations that were systematically covered up by your administration. He gestured to one of his agents. Agent Martinez, please escort Principal Morrison to the mobile command unit for questioning. The principal was led away, his protests falling on deaf ears. Preston's bravado finally cracked completely. Please, he said, his voice breaking. This is all a misunderstanding. It was just what? Harper asked. Her laptop now displaying a timeline of Preston's crimes. Just the 37 documented incidents of harassment. Just the 6 students who transferred schools because of your terrorism. Just the 3 who attempted suicide. Her voice remained clinical, but her eyes burned with controlled fury. Or just the $200,000 your father paid to make various complaints disappear. The cafeteria doors opened again, and this time, the new arrivals sent shockwaves through the student body. Mayor Whitmore stormed in, his face purple with rage, followed by 2 men in expensive suits who could only be lawyers. This is outrageous, the mayor bellowed. I demand you release my son immediately. This is harassment of a minor. But David Sinclair didn't even look up from the tablet an agent had handed him. Mayor Whitmore, perfect timing. We have some questions about several suspicious deposits to your campaign fund that coincidentally align with dates when complaints against your son were withdrawn. You can't prove... Actually, Harper interrupted, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. Digital forensics, recovered every deleted email, every backdoor payment, every threat made to victims' families. She turned the screen toward the mayor. Including this interesting exchange where you threatened to have the Chen family deported if they didn't drop charges against Preston. Sarah Chen, still filming from her spot 3 tables away, let out a small sob. Her parents had been terrified for months. Afraid to speak up, afraid to fight back. Now, finally, someone was listening. More parents arrived in a parade of luxury vehicles, Jax's father in his Mercedes, Bryce's parents in their Tesla, all accompanied by teams of lawyers. But for once, their wealth and connections meant nothing. Federal agents met each one with warrants and evidence that painted a picture of systemic corruption reaching from the school board to City Hall. Mr. Dalton, an agent addressed Jax's father, we need to discuss your interesting relationship with college recruiters and the falsified transcripts that helped secure your son's Stanford scholarship. Jax's face went white. Dad, his father's lawyer stepped forward. My client won't be answering any questions without... Your client, David Sinclair interrupted, is looking at 20 years for wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. I suggest he starts cooperating. As the adults were led away for questioning, Harper turned back to the 3 boys who'd started this confrontation. They looked smaller now, stripped of the protection their family names had always provided. You know, the saddest part, Harper said, her voice carrying across the silent cafeteria. You could have just been decent human beings. You had every advantage: wealth, connections, opportunities others dream of. But you chose to use those gifts to hurt people weaker than yourselves. Bryce, blood still dripping from his nose, tried one last time. You ruined our lives, our futures. No, Harper replied quietly. You ruined your own lives the moment you decided that money made you untouchable. I just made sure you faced consequences. Federal agents moved in, reading rights to the 3 young men who hours ago had ruled Westfield Academy through fear. As they were handcuffed, students began to stand, one by one, not applauding, not celebrating, but bearing witness to a moment that would define their school's future. David Sinclair approached his daughter, and for the first time, his professional mask slipped. 3 months, he said softly. 3 months of watching you walk into this place every day, knowing what you were facing. It was worth it, Harper replied, gesturing to the students around them. For them, for everyone who's been told to just deal with it. That boys will be boys. That this is just how things are. An agent approached with a tablet. Sir, we've finished processing the electronic evidence. The scope is significant. This connects to 6 other private schools in the network. Harper and her father exchanged a look. The investigation at Westfield Academy was complete, but their work was far from over. Over the following weeks, the impact rippled outward like a stone thrown into still water. 23 staff members were suspended pending investigation. The entire school board resigned. Federal oversight was established not just at Westfield but at private schools across Connecticut. Preston Whitmore was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, with additional time for the assault on a federal witness. His father's political career ended with his own arrest on corruption charges. The family fortune, built on generations of influence peddling, evaporated in legal fees and settlements to victims. Jax Dalton lost his Stanford scholarship and faced 3 years for assault and fraud. His father's connections to college recruiting scandals triggered a nationwide investigation that would claim dozens of athletic programs. Bryce Callahan, despite his family's legal firm, couldn't escape 2 years in juvenile detention, followed by 5 years of probation. The firm itself collapsed when their client list was exposed, revealing a pattern of defending predators and silencing victims. But there were victories, too. Sarah Chen received a full scholarship to art school, funded by a new program for bullying survivors. 47 victims found their voices, many going on to become advocates for change. Federal legislation inspired by the Westfield case passed unanimously, establishing stricter oversight and harsher penalties for institutional bullying. Harper Sinclair completed her senior year at a different school. A normal student for the first time in months, but normal was relative for someone who'd spent their junior year bringing down a conspiracy of cruelty at Westfield's graduation ceremony 6 months later. The valedictorian made an unexpected announcement. "I want to thank someone who's not here today," she said, looking directly at one of the many cameras documenting the reformed school's first scandal-free graduation. Harper Sinclair showed us that standing up to evil isn't just possible, it's necessary. The applause that followed was genuine, heartfelt, and tinged with the regret of a community that had learned its lesson too late, in a small apartment across the country. Harper watched the live stream on her laptop. Beside her, a new case file waited another school, another pattern of abuse, another chance to make a difference. Her phone buzzed with a message from her father. "Ready for the next one?" She looked at the camera, knowing that somewhere, bullies in another elite institution were about to learn what Preston Whitmore and his crew had discovered too late. A small smile played at her lips as she typed her response. Always ready. Because bullies existed everywhere. But so did people willing to stop them. And Harper Sinclair had just proven that sometimes. All it took was one person refusing to be a victim to bring down an empire of cruelty. The new case file contained photos of another prestigious academy, another group of untouchable students, another community silenced by fear and money. But now they had a blueprint, a precedent, and most importantly, proof that the powerful could fall. Harper closed her laptop and began to pack. In 10 seconds, 3 bullies had learned that their reign of terror could end in 3 months. An entire system of corruption had crumbled. And this was just the beginning. Bullies exist everywhere, she said to no one in particular, her words hanging in the empty apartment like a promise and a threat. So do we.